Hi, everyone. I'm here to give yet another talk on MRV. For those of you who have stuck through from the beginning, I salute you. You have earned your data collection nerding out credentials. Please, let's hang out sometime. But today, I'm going to talk about the role of independent DMRV in the carbon market. So you've heard from Rehan about the challenges of DMRV. You heard from Annie and Josiah about going deep on what DMRV can look like in practice. I'll focus my talk more on what this means when you're going out there trying to get your carbon credits sold versus all the other projects in the market. So for those who don't know Carbonfuture, just a very brief introduction here. Carbonfuture works on the buyer and supplier side of the carbon markets. We help sell carbon credits to the buyers. We sell them portfolios of credits. Oftentimes buyers are looking for some diversity in the carbon credits they're purchasing, so we can bundle that up for them and put them there. More relevant for today, on the supply side, we help projects through the certification process to get their carbon credits issued, tracking the data necessary for that issuance, and then, as I mentioned, selling the credits in the market. What is MRV? By now, everybody should have a good sense of that. For reporting, Annie talked about this a little bit. Reporting is more than just reporting to the standard. You really need to think about, what is this data going to tell the buyer of my carbon credits? And we'll get into that. There's the scientific rigor, but there's also other aspects that are really important that you want your reporting to show. But at the end of the day, you really do need that journey from carbon capture to credit issuance. For biochar, that means from when you're producing that biochar at your facility, day in and day out, all the way to where it's being applied, whether that's on a field somewhere at a farmer, or being put into concrete or used for water filtration. We're seeing a lot more use cases for biochar, so that's great. But in every case, you need to know, where is that carbon going? So where does MRV fit into the whole context of the carbon removal journey? You have the standards setting the rules for what is necessary to issue a carbon credit. You have the DMRV tracking the data to make all of this possible. That data could be coming in as scanned receipts from a shoebox, or through IoT integration, ERP systems, through an API, more digital way, often all of the above. You have an independent body verifying the data. So this is really important, that you have to have that auditor or validation and verification body, somebody who's looking at the data you've collected and saying, yes, this shows that the carbon removal activity that's being claimed is what actually happened. Assuming you pass that verification, then the standard can certify your carbon credits, get them issued. Now they exist as something that can be sold. And so you want to bring those to the market. There's lots of different ways you can access the market. You could just try to sell them on your own. You can put them up in a marketplace where they're showcased for buyers to see. Where we see the most success is going and knocking on the doors of those buyers, walking away when they don't answer, knocking again and again, seeing them at conferences like this, and just constantly looking at anybody who's got a net zero target and saying, how are you going to achieve that net zero target? There's no way you're going to get your emissions down to zero. You have to offset. Durable removals are the most credible way to offset your emissions. So you really want to have that deeper conversation with the buyer. I'd love to say that the number of buyers in the market is going up on an exponential scale. It's not. It's growing, but it's growing incrementally. These are just tough conversations happening every day, chipping away, and then, yes, we got a new buyer into the market. They're going for durable removals. Maybe it's part of a portfolio with cheaper carbon removal solutions like nature-based credits that maybe don't have the same durability, but again, the price point's lower. So you can bundle all this together and just get more buyers buying more durable carbon removal credits. And like I said, I really think the path to success here is rolling up your sleeves and just having those conversations again and again and again. There's several approaches to MRV in the market. You heard a couple of them already. So as a project developer, you could try to do the MRV in-house. You can work on a bunch of manual spreadsheets to track everything. You can do it on pencil and paper if you wanted to. I don't recommend it. But either way, even if you're building out digital systems, even if you're developing your own software, like you hire a contractor to build software, or you have a software engineer on your staff to try to build something that automates it, what we see is that as the project grows and evolves, there's a lot of complexity that comes into play that you didn't think about at the beginning, and now you have to spend a lot of time manually working around this complexity until you can build it into the automation. It can be a real time suck, money suck if you're paying for those engineering development services. And so it's maybe an attractive pathway in the beginning, but I don't recommend it if your project's going to have any kind of complexity. If you're thinking about having multiple facilities, if you're thinking about bringing in partners, maybe you're not distributing the biochar directly, you're selling it to a distributor who then distributes it to the farmers and it gets it applied to the field. Like, think about all the tracking that's going to happen in that case, and realize it might be easier to have somebody who does this as their core focus work on this. So there is MRV provided by some of the standards bodies. So you could use their digital tools. It is a little easier than developing in-house, but they tend to be pretty generic. They're built for supporting multiple protocols across multiple methodologies. And critically, when you're thinking about market access, buyers have preferences for certain standards over others. And if you go with a standard, they might be the leading standard today, and they've got this tool, it works good enough, maybe I'll just use that, right? But then as the market evolves, if the buyers start to preference a different standard, right? And we've seen this, if you asked a couple of years ago, what's the best standard to go with for buyer preference, it would be different than the answer today, right? If you've locked yourself in where not only are you certified with them, but all your operations are based on their tool, it can be very hard to then switch and follow the market and evolve with it. So for that reason, we recommend independent digital MRV. It can streamline and automate all the data collection and tracking that you need, the reporting to the standards, and then as I mentioned, you also want that reporting available to the buyers so they can see the journey and essentially have a really good understanding of the narrative. Josiah had mentioned that you're selling a digital product, and logistically that's what's happening. I would say really you're selling a narrative. That's what the buyers are looking for. They want the story behind your carbon credit, and that's what MRV can provide in its reporting. And it gives you flexibility, so as your project evolves, as you add additional facilities, maybe they're very similar but slightly different. You're bringing in new partners, new stakeholders. The standards are evolving themselves. Even if you're staying with the same standard, their rules are changing every couple of years. So you've got a tool that's keeping up with all of that complexity and scaling along with your project. So some key benefits of independent digital MRV. We talked about for suppliers, the streamlining, the reporting. So confidentiality, I didn't mentioned before. So again, you might be working with partners along your value chain. And some of those partners may be more or less comfortable sharing some of the data associated with this carbon removal journey. It needs to all be reported to the standard, but you don't necessarily have approval to share that information with everybody along the value chain. And so having an independent tool allows the different stakeholders to submit their data into the independent DMRV. It can be reported to the standard as needed, but keeping confidentiality between the different stakeholders in the value chain. So importantly, buyers see a lot of benefit in this. So obviously there's the transparency around what your, like the science that's going on around the carbon removal journey, that yes, this carbon was actually removed. But more and more we're seeing buyers interested in assurance that you're actually going to deliver those carbon credits that is in your offtake agreement. So you've done the hard work, you've knocked on the doors 100 times, you've got the agreement in place, that buyer expects credits next year. And if they don't get them next year, they have to go out to the market and buy different credits to replace what they didn't get. And oftentimes that's at a very high price premium. So they're very wary of, is your project actually going to deliver the carbon credits at the right volume at the right time? And DMRV can help provide assurance to the buyer on that angle as well, because you're tracking not just here's my credits issued and here's the time that they're expected to be issued. You can show, hey, I've produced the biochar, it's on its way to the field to be applied, then there's a standard amount of time to send that data to the registry, get the carbon credit issued, and then delivered. So even before you actually have the carbon credits in hand, you have something that shows you're on track to deliver on time and at the right volume. And that really helps buyers feel confident that they should sign their agreements with you rather than another project that might fall down and they don't have this visibility. DMRV also really helps the standards. As I mentioned, it gives you flexibility to not be locked in, but there is benefit for the standards in that now they're not getting scanned receipts in spreadsheets and everything in different formats from all the different projects. They're getting standardized information in a consistent template, digitally connected often with APIs, right? So you're sending all this information and they can review it much more quickly, which helps you because your credits get issued faster, but it also helps them. Anybody who's worked with some of the standards knows they often can get overloaded with everything that's coming in their way. The market's trying to grow very fast. Financing is still a challenge, so you can't have teams grow. If Puro renamed themselves Puro.ai, they could probably triple the size of their team overnight and handle all this, but that's not how we roll in this industry. So they're overwhelmed, and the digital tools help them manage their workload a lot better. So here's some testimonials from buyers and suppliers and in the standards, just to kind of validate what I just said. You'll see talk of having higher confidence in the projects from the buyers, the suppliers, getting the transparency and showcasing the trustworthiness of their products, and the standards helping with their workload. So let's get into a couple examples here where independent digital MRV has helped projects. Solaire is a biochar producer in France. They started in 1993 as a family company, got into biochar production in 2012. They currently have 2 operational facilities. Their volume is pretty similar to a lot of the projects that I've talked to. They're kind of mid-scale volume. And they've always had a vision to provide sustainable products. And when they were getting into biochar, they needed to start tracking. And this is a case where they might sell some of their biochar for use cases that aren't applicable to to carbon credits, because if the biochar is going to be combusted, you can't get a carbon credit off of it, right? So they have multiple facilities sending biochar in multiple directions. This is an example where the complexity really could have overwhelmed them if they weren't working with a DMRV provider. And so this allowed them to enter in the market and then grow and scale and evolve as it goes. Exomad Green is another DMRV provider. They're at a very large scale. They're the largest scale in the industry. And independent DMRV is enabling them to operate at that scale without overburdensome data collection requirements. Just in the interest of time, I'll move on a little bit here. We've got a quote from the Chief Marketing and Sales Officer at Exomad Green. And you'll see he talks about how it ensures transparency for their clients. In his mind, it's always going to be focused on what does the buyer want. And the buyer wants robust digital tracking to provide high-quality credits in assurance of delivery. So last slide here. When do you want to start incorporating DMRV? This is a question I get all the time. Folks reach out to me. They say, hey, we know we need to do MRV. Is now the right time? Should I do it later? Should I have already done it earlier? I would say that it's never too early to talk to a DMRV partner and try to get a sense of what you might need to do. But with that said, if you don't have line of sight to your funding, focus on that. Like, that's where your time should be spent. If you're not sure where your project's going to be located, what feedstock you're going to use, what you're going to do with the biochar, those are very critical elements. I'd love to say, hey, DMRV is all that you need to be successful. It's not, right? Handle the basics before you dig in deep on MRV. And I know that each of these boxes here is a massive amount of work, is a challenge, lots of roadblocks to overcome. So a DMRV partner might be able to help you with some of these things. We tend to work with so many projects, we see commonalities, but don't sweat MRV until you've got the basics figured out. And then selecting a standard, I would recommend that you have at least done a little bit of research on the standards and know a general sense of their requirements, what your options are. Before engaging with the DMRV provider, you don't have to have made a final decision. The DMRV provider can help you with that. But it's just going to be a more productive conversation if you go into it at least having a general sense there. So I know I'm about out of time here, so say thank you. I know some of you were taking pictures. If anybody wants any of the slides, feel free to stop by our booth. We're at spot 603 in the exhibit hall. I can give you my contact information. I'm happy to send you the presentation. You can get all the slides. Any questions?